Well, welcome everyone to a symposium on the future of architecture and the future of the AIA. And it's a very appropriate term, a very appropriate time to be discussing this. This event is jointly sponsored by Lawrence Technological University and the University of Detroit Mercy, and I see in the room representing University of Detroit Mercy is Steve Vogel, FAIA, their former dean. So welcome, Steve. And we always very much appreciate the jointly sponsoring these events during the school year. It represents a very good collaboration between two schools. I know you're going to cut this out, but I'm going to drop my plate off somewhere, okay? I don't want to be holding it this whole time. What's that? Yeah. So, as I said, the topic is the future of architecture and the future of the AIA. I will invite I will introduce our panelists in just a few minutes. I just want to start off with a little introduction. The architecture profession in many ways is at a crossroad. This is not the first crossroad that it's ever approached, but it's this crossroad. And so is the American Institute of Architects. The profession has always evolved, and the AIA will always have to evolve. When I think back, it was 120 years ago with the creation of the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, the leader of that effort of really transforming the way that people not only viewed the city of Chicago, but viewed the city in general was Daniel Burnham, one of the great architects of his time. And he also led the first great American planning movement, the City Beautiful movement that followed, and did landmark plans in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and in numerous other cities. That movement eventually dissolved, and the planning movement really became its own self-standing entity that became separate from architects in many ways as the social sciences proliferated and urban planning became much more about efficiency than about civic beauty. But at one point, 100 years ago, architects owned the planning process in the United States. Today, as a practicing urban designer myself, if I want to talk about urban design, I have to go to the American Planning Association conference and not the AIA as much. In the mid-20th century, it was considered unethical by the American Institute of Architects and their code of ethics for an architect to also be a real estate developer. And that was challenged by then architect John Portman from Atlanta. And you might remember his fame was developing the Hyatt hotel chain and the big atrium buildings. And he was actually not just the architect, he was the developer. He created work for himself. And he challenged that ethics rule, and the AIA adapted and changed in accordance with what was a real trend for architects to actually develop their own work at the time. And so the policy was modified. Today, we face a proliferation of many small firms, and those small firms in many ways are spun off from the profession. One of the great creators of small firm activity are recessions. Because as the large firms pair people off during a recession, people hang shingles and they do very inventive work, and they dramatically change the nature of the profession, their practice, and how it's viewed by others, and they do very inventive work. But also, we've had the proliferation of huge mega firms, the absorption of moderate and large-sized firms by firms like AECOM, whose numbers are in the 40 or 50,000 employee range, and that is dramatically changing the nature in which we practice. One wonders what's being squeezed out. Quite often, it's the middle-sized firm. So we're in this global recession, and we're facing global practice, and the recession has been devastating for not only our profession but also for the standing of our profession in the public eye. And the New York Times and other well-known journalists, I guess you could say, have been writing in disparaging terms about the profession of architecture and architectural education not being a good investment. Yet, the economy is showing signs of recovery. And if you read the research that's been done by McGraw-Hill and by Engineering News Record, it is predicted that there will be a shortfall in the number of architects compared to the number of jobs as early as the year 2014. And Engineering News Record quantified it, 23% growth in the architectural profession as baby boomers are retiring. It bodes well for students in architecture today. And since it's in Engineering News Record, they also said for architects working for construction firms, 13% growth in that aspect of architectural practice. So, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And some of that light is also in non-traditional practice. Now, education-wise, it's been over 2 decades since the famous Boyer report. And that was a report that was undertaken by AIA along with a number of other collateral organizations. And it called for bridging the gap between the academy and the profession, and the academy and practice, to create a community of architecture, if you will. One of the questions that we need to ask from the academic point of view as well as the professional point of view, is the gap actually getting smaller, or is it actually getting wider? And if it is getting wider, what's the cause and how do we cure that? And do we even believe that it needs to be cured? So the AIA here in this decade is dealing with repositioning the AIA for its future, to be more relevant to its members, to be more vital to society, to be a great communicator and advocate on the value of architecture and design. And as the baby boomers retire, the repositioning may help the AIA to position itself for a stronger future. As baby boomers retire, membership drops, and emerging professionals are not joining in the percentage of past generations. So for every new person in, there are numbers of baby boomers that are retiring from the profession and no longer paying dues to the AIA. Well, with all of these things and all of these dilemmas that we face, who better to elicit a discussion of these subjects than the current national president of the American Institute of Architects? And he just happened to be here today. Isn't that nice? We will be joined by a panel in a moment whom I will introduce, but I'll start off by introducing, for some opening remarks, Mickey Jacob, FAIA. And Mickey received his architectural degree from the University of Detroit Mercy. He is the managing principal of Urban Studio Architects. One of his true passions is political advocacy on behalf of the profession. I think he just bleeds political advocacy. He's now serving as 2013 president of the AIA, and before that held a number of offices as he worked his way up through the AIA hierarchy of the board of directors, committee chairs, and all of those things. He is a member of AIA Tampa Bay, as well as being active on a number of committees over a number of years. So, Mickey, it is such a pleasure having you today, and we're ready for your remarks.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Am I on? Good. Is that better? Get a little closer to it. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for those kind words, Glenn, in your opening remarks, and I'll talk about it. But first, I just want to do a little straw poll here while I have the microphone. So how many students are here? Can you identify how many students? Okay, cool. How many educators? And practitioners? Okay, great. Well, for you, and others connected with the industry in some way, shape, or form? Well, first, thank you all for being here and sharing your afternoon with us. It's exciting for me to be back in the Detroit area. I grew up in Windsor, and my family still lives there. I moved to Tampa, Florida 32 years ago, about 20 minutes after I wrote my last exam at U of D, and got on I-75 and pointed my car south, and in those days it stopped right in downtown Tampa, and that's where I ended up. It wasn't a real strong strategy, but it got me to a place where I could play golf 365 days of the year, which was my real goal. So, but my true passion is architecture, and my other passion is leadership. And last night at UDM, I had an opportunity to do a lecture about leadership and talk about those things and how it affects our profession and what it means, especially for you students who are now have chosen to educate in architecture and what the future potentially holds for you. And I think that's a real important aspect of it. You know, the big firm thing is really interesting, and Glenn's kind of right. There's disparity going on right now. The big firms are getting bigger. The medium firms are starting to go away. Small firms are staying small. I was at the Large Firm Roundtable, which is a group of the 30 largest firms in the country last year. In fact, I'm going to it next week again. And I sat with Ralph Hawkins at dinner, the CEO of HKS, and we were kind of talking about it. Now, I have an 8-person firm in Tampa, Florida, a local firm. Only one office, our world headquarters, as we like to call it. I sat with Ralph when we were talking about it, so I said, Ralph, what kind of revenues are you guys doing? And he said to me, well, to keep us going, pay the bills, keep us going, make the profit we want, we have to bill $750,000 a calendar day. And I told him, I said, well, if you guys just take a couple days off on the weekend, you can shove that to us, and we have a monster year. So it's all your perspective on how you do it and what you're doing. So it's really kind of interesting. First, before I start, here's our number one priority with the AIA. Overarching above everything is creating jobs. Our goal is to figure out ways to help our members create jobs. First and foremost, and as long as I'm in leadership, we will continue to focus on that because I think it's ultimately the most important thing we can do. No secret about the economy here in Michigan the last several years. Florida is pretty much a mirror image of Michigan. We've had a horrible economy there when the mortgage bubble burst. So did my firm. We're 8 people now. At the start of the recession, we were 33, so you can do the math of what happened to us because we did a lot of residential projects that just stopped dead in their tracks, fell off the cliff, and those are the challenges we've all had to face. So how do we get past that? What's the future hold for the profession in the AIA? Well, first, there's 3 things I think that are critically important as we look forward and what we have to do to start coming out of this recession and really changing things. Okay, those 3 things are leadership, advocacy, and communication. Okay, leadership, building leaders. Not only is it the theme of the convention I'll be presiding over, see, I always try and get that shameless plug in, don't I? In Denver, June 20 to 22nd. I hope you're all there. But also, I think it's one of our most important strategy because leadership is critically important in moving this profession forward. Leadership in the profession, leadership in business, leadership in the community, and leadership in politics. And as I told the students last night at UDM, and I'll tell you today, political leadership for you as a student and as a young person is critically important to the future of the profession. Because the more you are vested in any kind of political activity, political activism, and I use activism in a word that is not the normal way that you look at activists as. Activism in a positive way, and getting out there and getting engaged in the process is so important because those are the people that are making decisions that affect your practice and what you're going to do in this profession every day, and we need to be out there being a part of that decision-making process. So whatever you can do to get involved with political leadership in particular, and leadership isn't an office, it's not a title, it's doing something. It's getting out there and being engaged. I'm involved in politics. You might call me a political wonk. I love it. I'm really engaged with it. I've been involved for several years. I do a lot of assistance in helping good people campaign to get elected, both from a local level in your city and county governments to the state level to congressional level. And it's a lot of fun. But it's very important work. And you as a student can get engaged. I tell everybody, you will get more political street cred just by showing up to a candidate that you like, that you think ought to be elected, and walking a neighborhood with them on a Sunday afternoon with their T-shirt on and banging on doors. You will get more visibility from that, and you will be you will be asked to do more things by those kinds of people because you will be perceived as leaders and perception is reality. And so I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to look at ways you can be leaders in the profession because leadership is so critical within our profession. What we forget about architecture is, in order for us to move forward, we have to take charge of what's going on in our profession. You've heard an awful lot about the USGBC, and a lot of people say, wow, you know, we let them, you know, take that away from the AIA or whatever. You have to remember the USGBC was founded by AIA members. It's AIA members who took an initiative to create a market that wasn't there before, and it's a brilliant business plan. If you're going to start something like that, I suggest you study it, because they created a market that didn't have any kind of recognition before, and they got recognition, and they've created incredible value for it, and that's really a good model of how you start a business. Secondly is advocacy. Advocacy is critically important. Every time you talk about architecture, no matter where you're at, you are an advocate for the profession. So talk about it with love, talk about it with passion, talk about it with interest, and challenge ourselves to be better at it. But advocacy, being out there and creating that public awareness of the importance of architecture to everybody's life, because you can't walk out this door right now and walk through this campus or down the street or go into any one of those office buildings or go to any of the retail areas in this neighborhood without being touched by the work of an architect. All of that stuff was touched by an architect in some way, shape, or form. We touch everybody's life every day in everything that they do. So being an advocate for the importance of architecture and how it changes lives is critically important. And third is communication. Communication on all different levels. Our role as community leaders is being out there talking about what our communities need to do to make the quality of life better. And we have to be able to communicate the importance of architecture, so that ties right into leadership, it ties right into advocacy. So think about how those are, what things you can do, because it's the little things as we take small step forwards to make the biggest difference. So it's not doing big things that you see in the front page of the Detroit News, or is it Free Press now? Which one of those two? I can't remember that's left. But it's all the little things that you do that nobody gets recognition for, but are so critically important to the evolution of a community in its growth to make it a better place to live. So there's 5 different initiatives that I think are critically important in order to support that. And these are initiatives that we've really talked about. How do we develop this new thing called repositioning with the AIA? And repositioning is nothing more than looking in the mirror at ourselves, looking at what we do and how we do it now and what we want to be, and making a decision collectively throughout our network of AIA members of what we want to achieve with that. Where do we want the profession to go, and what do we want it to be? So there's 5 initiatives that really started this discussion, okay? First one, promote the value of design. It touches everyone like we talked about. It's everywhere in everything we do, okay? We have to improve the public awareness of the value of what that is for a couple of reasons. One is, there isn't anybody in this country that doesn't deserve good design in their lives. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the CEO of GM or if you're living in a public housing complex and having to use food stamps. It doesn't matter who you are. You deserve good design. That's our role and responsibility, first and foremost. Second, we have to promote it within our community. We have to be the vocal advocates and the authoritative source for all things good in design. And that's right from where a community chooses to put its sidewalks, to where a community chooses to put its developments, to where a community chooses whether or not they're going to go after federal money for a rail system, which I know you're all involved with right now here in Detroit. All of those things need our input, because that affects the built environment of your city, and the built environment of your city affects everybody every day. Critically important. So, number 2, enhance member sharing of knowledge. If we are going to expand architecture and the value of architecture in the marketplace, we have to do it in a knowledge-based way instead of a time and services-based way that we do it now. We have to stop looking at the value of what we do in terms of the value of our hourly rate, and we need to look at the value of the information and the expertise and the knowledge we have that we can share, because the new economy out there worldwide is all about knowledge and all about information. So we as an architecture profession have to really take a strong look at our expertise and our knowledge, and how do we communicate that we increase the value of what we have to offer for our communities so that our marketplace value increases as well as the value of what we do for our communities. And I think that's critically important. It's all about information networking. You see it in commercials every day. Companies are already talking about it. And we haven't been, and we better start. Because if we don't, the world is going to run us over, because that's where it's going. Number 3 is renew a focus on emerging professionals. I think, Glenn touched on it a little bit. This recession has hurt us bad. We've lost a lot of jobs. We've lost a lot of young people. And we've had some very bad media about architecture education in the last year or so, which is, quite frankly, just one story that was put out that keeps getting run, which is irresponsible journalism, and I'm not afraid to say that out loud, and I'm not afraid to say it in the pages of Architect Magazine, which I will in a couple of months. Because it's important to know that the education you get as an architect opens up more doors for you than any other type of education you can possibly have. Because the skill sets that you're taught in architecture school are all about solving problems and being creative. Not many other degree programs do that as in a collective way that we do in architecture education. So you have the opportunity to not only go into architecture as a career in a traditional sense, working for a firm, you also have the ability to go after all different kinds of ways to make a living using your creativity and the skill sets that you learned here. We want to increase the value of licensure. It's a big hot topic. You have to go through get a master's degree or a professional degree, then you have 3 years IDP, and then you're faced with writing an ARE exam that is arduous at best through the NCARB process, and we are working very hard with NCARB right now to change that, and I can tell you that I'm excited about where NCARB is trying to go with this, but the changes aren't happening fast enough, and it's our role and responsibility to bridge that gap to make sure we lessen that time in which our young people can go through the process, not easier, but faster, and get licensed. Because when you get licensed, it does one very important thing for you. It gives you the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And once you become an entrepreneur, you can choose to do darn near anything you want. Because as Glenn said, this recession has given us an opportunity to create more small businesses. And I'd like nothing better for each and every one of you to create a small business when you're done and you get licensed, and put the fear of God into those big guys that have to bill $750,000 a calendar day. Being innovative, being creative, and looking at research. Because that's really one of the things we need to go forward, and I'll speak about that briefly here. Okay. I know I always like to talk too long. So we need to optimize the ability of AIA components. Give AIA components more ability to do what they do best, which is serve the members, and that includes students. That includes our young people and emerging professionals. And I think it's critically important that we're looking at ways to include young people in the decision-making process that we're doing in the AIA, in particular in repositioning, and we're going to be doing that. We're also looking at ways to get it more inclusive in terms of policy, AIA policy, and more inclusive in terms of giving visibility to our best and brightest out there, both through the pages of AI Architect, both through putting you on the stage at convention, both through doing new scholarship programs. One of the things I'm going to announce, and you're one of the first to hear it, it hasn't gone out yet, but I'm putting together 10 grants for AIA members, including students and young professionals, for anybody that applies to and gets accepted to a community-based leadership program. I'll pay for it, 100%. All you got to do is send us the application, the acceptance letter, and the invoice, and we'll stroke the check for it. We want to show you that we're serious about leadership development in the AIA. And I'm very serious about looking for new ways to do that, because we don't have to make up leadership training programs. They're out there, they're in the communities, and it puts you in front of people from other walks of life that will be leaders in your community, will be leaders in your political structure here and making decisions for years to come. And you build those relationships, which creates more value. So we're really looking at how we can do that. And I think the only way we'd be successful moving forward is to build that level of leadership. We also have to look forward to marketplace trends. We can't keep building projects the way we build them now for today. We have to start thinking about design in context of what tomorrow will bring. Because a lot of this side of the room here are people like myself who are baby boomers. We're cycling out of leadership in the profession and community business politics. We've got max 15 years left. Well, the way my 401k went, maybe 20 years. And your generation is coming behind us. And your generation is the first generation that will cycle into leadership in all of those areas that has been completely digital your entire life. So the way that you operate, do business, and communicate will be incredibly different than we've ever done it before. We have to prepare for that. We have to start designing for it. So sustainability and technology are the two trends we need to look at very closely. Sustainability from a standpoint that we have to look way beyond the environmental definition of sustainability and make it a cultural thing. We have to start talking about changing the culture of what we do. I'm sorry, going out and buying a Prius and continuing the same driving habits you have is not sustainability, okay? It's a great masquerade, but it's not sustainable. We have to change what we do and how we do it. And until we start thinking on that level, and that includes in education, that includes in everyday business, that includes our cultural behavior, that includes transportation, all of those things, way beyond rating systems, way beyond green products, way beyond automobiles, all of those things we look at sustainability as now. How do we change the culture of this country to behave? Because if we don't, the rest of the world is going to go zooming by us because it's happening out there already. We have to change our culture, and architects need to be the leaders and talking about that and making it happen. And lastly, technology. I know I'm done, right? Think about technology in terms of where you have to go to make the changes necessary to make this all happen. And now I can stop. I do that all the time. Have you noticed this?
It's a lot easier to stop you here than it is at an AIA board meeting, I can tell you that. So, we have 3 people to help respond and elicit discussion, and I will introduce them and then invite them each to make some brief remarks. And they could be your own remarks, they could be playing off of Mickey's remarks, but people come from different perspectives. The first is Tamara Burns, AIA, and she is the current president of AIA Michigan. She received her Bachelor of Science in Architecture from University of Michigan and her Master of Architecture from University of California, Berkeley. She's a principal in Hopkins Burns Studio. Her partner is Gene Hopkins, who is also a former AIA national president from Michigan, and we're very proud of you, Gene. And they together are very well known for their firm specialization in historic preservation. So I'm going to introduce everyone, then we're going to ask Tamara to start. Our second responder and discussant will be Professor James Stevens, AIA. He is a member of the faculty here at Lawrence Technological University. He received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Savannah College of Art and Design in 1994, and he received his Master of Architecture from North Carolina State University in 2007, which, by the way, your dean was a former AIA president as well. And Jim is an assistant professor here at Lawrence Tech, and he serves as the sophomore studio coordinator. He is director of the MAKE lab, and it's a digital fabrication lab that we run here on campus. And he's a member of American Institute of Architects, the Huron Valley component, which is Ann Arbor. And by the way, so are you, Tamara. What's happening? We have all these Ann Arbor people here today. Well, here's a non-Ann Arbor person. Kurt Neiswender, AIA and lead AP. And Kurt is actually a current student, already a registered architect, but a student here getting a degree in urban design, a specialization area. And he received his Bachelor of Architecture from University of Southern California in 2003. He's currently enrolled at Lawrence Tech in the MUD program, Master of Urban Design. He works as a project architect at Sedgwick Ferwetta Architects, and he is serving as the 2013-14 AIA Young Architect Regional Director for Michigan. And he is a member of the AIA Young Architects Forum, and he's currently serving as the AIA Flint Emerging Professionals Committee Chair. So we're well represented around the state here today. And with that said, Tamara, I'd like to turn to you first for some of your opening thoughts and remarks about the future of the profession of architecture and the future of the AIA.
Thank you, Glenn. I've been scribbling all of my notes as Mickey was speaking, so I'll have to see if I can muddle through this. But as Glenn said, I am a preservationist, as any good preservationist does. We look backwards to look forward and to understand the fundamental things that we need to carry forward. You know, what is important? We need to look back at why we got into architecture in the first place. What is important about it? Understand where you came from. And so I thought about why I got into architecture, and as I don't know, maybe trite as it sounds, I wanted to make the world a better place. Wanted to help our communities, and that's why I got into it, and that's still why I'm in it. And I think that's probably the fundamental important thing about architecture, and it's not going to change. I got into the AIA because someone asked me to. And I think that's very important. I want to tell you a little story. Just over a year ago, my mother received an award celebrating a lifetime of work in the Democratic Party and in the community of Ann Arbor. And she always talks about how encouragement from someone, and in this case it was her husband, my father, made all the difference in getting her involved and making a really big impact on her community. She ended up running for city council for 6 years, and she ran for mayor. While she was on council, she helped pass the Fair Housing Ordinance in Ann Arbor and made a huge difference in people's lives there. She lost that race for mayor. 2 months later, my father was killed, and my mom raised us 4 kids by herself. She went back to school, got her master's degree. She was a founding member of the DDA, Planning Commission, on and on and on and on. Great inspiration for me and for many people. And she's currently on probably 4 boards, and she chairs 2 of them. She's turning 90 this July. And I just tell that story to emphasize the importance and the impact of being involved. And by being involved, we envision our futures. You know, our future is not something that's just coming at us and we're going to arrive there. You know, we need to envision it and make it what we want it to be. And I believe we need to broaden our reach as architects and reach out to our partners in the built environment and the natural environment and ask each other to step up and get engaged. One small thing AI Michigan is doing is everywhere we visit a community as a board or XCOM or members, we're trying to create a service project in that community. So we are visible in the community helping out. Not necessarily in architecture, just reading to kids, as Mickey was talking about last night. But I see 2 specific areas where I think we can all have a huge impact. You guys can have a huge impact going forward. One of them is about climate change and the environment, energy. There's lots of statistics out there about the impact buildings have on our environment, and I won't go through them. I think they're pretty well known, but we can have such a huge impact on the environment, and I think it's our responsibility to do something about that and get involved and to speak out. I think, you know, we do work on buildings. We have LEED buildings. We need to speak out about it more, and fundamental change is going to happen more in our cultural change, as Mickey said. You know, laws being changed, and that's where we need to be involved. And they're not going to, you know, reach out to us if we're not speaking out. The other thing I think is got a huge opportunity and responsibility is public health, that intersection of design and public health. And if you were at the lecture last night, Mickey talked a little bit about Dr. Richard Jackson, who is probably one of the most well-known people that are speaking about this nationally or internationally. Has anyone here seen the public TV series Designing Healthy Communities? There's a 4-part series on PBS on designing healthy communities that was done by Dr. Jackson, and it's fabulous. You definitely should look for that. The obesity rate in Michigan is over 30%. 1 in every 10 Michiganders has diabetes. Architects can have a huge impact on that, on the way we design our communities. And we need to step up. We need to ask each other to get involved. AI Michigan is reaching out to the state currently to try to get involved with some of the state initiatives on obesity and some of the health issues. And, we've looked at the people who are involved with these initiatives. There's not a single architect, as far as we can tell, on these boards and these committees. So we want to be a part of it. So it's something AI Michigan is doing. We are currently in the early part of planning a Green Health Conference that will hopefully happen next spring here in Michigan. So I think those are 2 areas that I think we have great opportunity to get involved with in the future, and also responsibility.
Thank you very much. Jim, you were at the beginning of the pipeline, creating emerging professionals. And so as an educator, what do you have to say about the relationship between the profession and, at least the academy and the profession, and also the academy and AIA?
Well, I think the first thing to react a little bit to in some of Mickey's comments, I totally agree with him about the irresponsible journalism in regards to the profession and the education. One thing I would point out is generally when you read that architecture is a bad profession, the Yahoo or whoever then provides you a link to an online university where you can earn a degree in psychology, and then they get a cut or whatever the case is. So keep that in mind. And I totally concur with the value of the education, regardless if you plan to be a licensed professional in the future. One of the things that at least we try to do in the MIC Lab, and I think ultimately at Lawrence Tech, and it's ultimately shaped the way that we have approached our lab, is that our research and the things that we're interested in are not purely theoretical, and as the school's mantra, it's almost always balanced between theory and practice. But I like to say that our research is not mimicking practice, but in service to practice. So I feel like what we're doing is testing ideas, developing methodologies that could be used by future emerging professionals. And in fact, I think a few people that have come through the program have already started the process of making that a part of their profession. And I the best way to describe it for me, I guess, is with a story as well. And this, by the way, has happened, this exact same scenario has happened twice in the last 2 years. But the one that was the most obvious, we were asked as a lab to come and visit a job site in Detroit where a very small, kind of low-budget adaptive reuse project needed to take place. Now, this was at the worst part of the recession. And when I say, I mean, it was when most of people in Detroit were really hurting at its worst. And what the client said to me that got to me as an academic and a professional was that we've talked to 3 architecture firms and they all told us they can't help us. And I said, well, that's perfect. I want to come see you then. And the reality was that we were able to design a solution for this group, digitally fabricate that solution, install it, and provide them with a turnkey product. And the students working on it showed that it was a profitable endeavor. Now, was that something that could have sustained $750,000 a day? No. It potentially could if you scale it up, obviously, but the reality is that there was money and market share that we capitalized on with our skills as architects that the current way that the delivery of services was happening in Detroit did not accommodate. And I think when we talk about entrepreneurialism and we say that word, the word has to have actions associated with it. And in my mind, it's seeking, it sounds strange, but it's empathy. Like, you have to have empathy for your market as an architect. So through that empathy, you understand what's needed and what you can provide. And by understanding that, what you do is you identify market share. And when we talk about the creation of jobs, I mean, how do we create more jobs in architecture? We build more buildings. Well, that's one way. But the other way is to identify the market share that's untapped through new technology, new skills, and then a design understanding that will provide new jobs. And I think, and I'm not talking about jobs in architecture that don't lead to the built environment. I'm talking about directly involved with the built environment. And we've had the same scenario repeat over and over again where there's not, the people basically saying, we can't, no one can help us. And I think ultimately it's because no one can find what they need in a catalog. And I don't know how you can pay somebody as a professional to shop on your behalf. I mean, I think we have to capitalize on technologies that allow us to design and provide solutions and be paid for that knowledge that you speak of. And that's not in the Suites catalog. I think it's something that has to come from our understanding of design.
Thank you, Jim. Kurt, now you're a practicing professional, but you're also a current student. You're a young and emerging architect, and you advocate for young architects. And so, from your point of view, let's talk about the relationship between architecture as a profession and the AIA from the point of view of young architects.
Okay. I think it's actually a great segue because I'm sitting on the end, and I think one of the most important words regarding being a young professional is patience. So I'm the last person to speak, so it'll go back around, but sitting on the end here, I've had to practice my patience and take my notes and bide my time. But I guess leading into that, I have like a foot in both worlds where I bridged over the education from when I started my undergraduate, we started hand drawing. And then by the time I left, we were doing two-dimensional and three-dimensional drawings. And now it's pretty much all in the computer. So I kind of bridge the gap between the previous model. I don't know how to call it. I don't want to say old guard because it's not that you guys are older, but there's a divide between the
Standard service delivery.
Standard service delivery. Yes, that's a great way to put it. And what what the emerging professionals and all the students are learning now, and so I kind of have an understanding of both. But now that I'm working on my master's in urban design, kind of rounding out education of my architecture education, I'm excited because now I get to walk around the halls and be a student again, and it's inspiring to know all of you guys. Well, not personally, but at least some of you guys. And I guess I don't know. I'll ramble on here, but anyway, as an emerging professional, I guess Mickey pointed out a couple things. And it's about the advocacy and the voice, and really, when I first started working after school, I had no clue like what the AIA was and who they were and what they offered us or us and me, and so after I asked a few questions, I realized that that they're not always like Tamer's case are going to tap you on the shoulder and kind of invite you in. The biggest thing, and for most people, like myself, is I had to go and pursue the AIA and find out how I can get involved. And I think for all emerging professionals that are coming out, it's that step to go reach out and find a way to get involved and volunteer at any level. I mean, like if you look, as Glenn kind of nicely announced all the kind of names and titles that I have, some of them I applied for, and you go through a vetting process for that, and some of them is because I raised my hand at the Flint chapter meeting and I said, I'll do it. So there's really a range of ways to get involved, and and I think all it takes is that first step. Maybe that's where I'll cut myself off.
And the nice thing is actually when you get assigned tasks when you actually don't show up for the meeting. That's one of the perils of not showing up. We would like to open it up for any comments or questions. This is going to be a free-for-all now in this round. It's a free-for-all, Jim.
Yeah,
you can say whatever you want.
Since we have so many students out there, and it's kind of funny that we're all sitting up here talking about the future, and it seems like when you ask me what the future architecture is, it's out there. So it seems like for them to ask or to say what they foresee they would need from the AIA.
Let's
And you
at
can't
least
say
ask,
a job. That's
well, actually,
I guess you could.
Let's ask a student to
We know
be a
that already.
spokesperson for your group. What student wants to step forward and just say what you think that what should be the role of the AIA in your future? Why would you be interested in the AIA? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead. Good. Always good to volunteer.
Want me to just say my name, or?
State your name for the record. I take it you're at Lawrence Tech.
Yes.
But what year are you in? What year studio are you in?
Oh, well, I'm Greg Ezzo. I'm in IDS2 studio, and I'm not a part of the AIAS, but I'm involved with a lot of the AIAS stuff. So what I find is important with the AIAS and the AIA is not necessarily just finding the jobs, but finding the right people to connect with, to create those jobs, to take it to the next step, to find that, that untapped market by collaborating with those certain people on your ideas. So I believe, networking in general and generating those ideas is what makes the AIA important.
So what do you all think? Networking. Is that one of the reasons that you were drawn to AIA initially, was the ability to create the network?
Well, I can safely say that, my involvement from the AIA standpoint has opened up doors of possibilities for me in my career that's helped my business and helped me move forward just from meeting people and making connections and building relationships. And that's amazing how I think it seems to snowball down a hill for you. The more that you do that, the more it seems to happen, the more that people seek you out. And so, like in anything in life, when you start to build relationships with people, I think it's just, it comes back to you in just so many different ways. So, that's a critical aspect of, what I like about it. Meet lots of cool people.
Yeah, there's, when you register for the AI convention, there's these little boxes you check, and it says, why are you going to the convention? Is it because of the location or the continuing education units? And one of them is, I don't know what it says, something like the people or networking, and that's always a box I check.
And for emerging professionals, networking means drinks. But not
most of us.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get people out.
I would say AIAS, that's true. I mean, for me personally, my colleagues in graduate school that I went through the experience with, there's probably not a month that goes by that I don't receive some kind of email from them. Either I have asked them a question, they're asking me a question, or they want me to proof their CV or vice versa. So I think that what they're talking about, or what Mickey brought up about furthering his career, that kind of starts now. So when we talk to you guys about studio culture and AIAS and all these things, we're talking about going ahead and establishing those relationships now, because it's hard for you to understand that now, but they carry on a really long time, remarkably long, which is nice.
Philza has a question.
Hi, I'm Philza Walters. I'm director of the architectural engineering program here. And Tamara, I wanted to say, I know you spoke about your mom. She's such an inspiration. I want you to know you've been an inspiration for me, and I'm sure a lot of other young people too. I have a question for, I guess, both of you. I'm going to be heading out later today to go to the American Society of Civil Engineers conference for the Architectural Engineering Institute. So as an advocate of course, both professions of engineering and architecture, what would you like me to share while I'm there with the strategic board, which consists of, much like your large company roundtable, there's a board like that meets, but also the educational community, so all the chairs of the AE programs. And I want you to talk about the three tenets: leadership, advocacy, and communication, and how can that integration with other professional organizations help AIA to further the cause? What can I do to take your message forward?
Well, I think one thing I would like you to find out from them is if they have a young person's group in which I'm guessing they do. We're trying to do some connecting with our younger groups. We have a young contractors group here in Michigan. We have young planners. And I think that collaboration, again, of the different disciplines is great, and everyone learns from that. And I guess just get me some names and get some connections, because is this a national or is this a state? Okay. Because we really are trying to reach out and connect with these different groups, and it's not always as easy as to say it. So.
Anyone else want to come? Mickey?
You know, like, it's about collaboration, and if we don't start collaborating with our collateral organizations like those and many others, we're going to die. We have to learn how to do that. We have to learn to understand that working together on specific issues is really important. So starting to build that aura of collaboration is going to be critical, so that we can really together really work at the issues that face the communities, because we can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. We rely on each other for services to help get stuff done within our communities. We should be collaborating on a bigger level, strategically thinking about the future.
Thank you. We have, okay, go ahead.
Because Mickey mentioned collaboration, I think the younger generations, and I'll speak as part of Gen X/Gen Y, which most of everyone else is as I think we understand collaboration a lot more than maybe the older generations think. I think, when you tie in social media, everyone says, oh, social media. But when one person can send out a message on Facebook or Twitter and they can get 30, 40 replies and start building a consensus like right away, I mean, it's instantaneous. And I think we already can use those tools, and we're already building on those tools.
Thank you. I wonder why you look at me when you say the older generation. It seems like yesterday that I was in your position as the younger generation. Actually, I was sitting down next to Gene when you said 15 or 20 more years in a career, and Gene just about fell out of his chair, and he said, "There is no way." He says, "Do you know how old I'm going to be in 15 to 20 more years?" This is, I'm as an educator myself and someone who comes from a practice background, I'm always interested in the relationship between education and practice. And I did make a statement in my initial remarks about this gap between the profession of architecture and specifically the AIA and the academy. And number one, I want to see if you agree or disagree that is the gap a myth or a reality, point number one. And point number two, what is the role of professors in colleges of architecture in terms of relating to the profession and more specifically the AIA? Is there a role for that, or is the role really to teach about design devoid of a professional outcome? Jim, you can go first.
Well, I think from my perspective, the role of the profession and practice, it's absolutely the faculty's responsibility to engage that within their teachings. If you don't, I often use the term, it's not relevant, which isn't necessarily true. But I think that generally when I'm working with the students, even if they're creating something or they're working with a theoretical idea, we always place that within the context of what I hope is reality, and tell them the consequences of what they're doing from the perspective of practice, so that they have an understanding of that. In terms of the AIA, I think it actually becomes a lot more difficult. For me, I think we talk about the AIA from more of a leadership position, a legislative position, an activism position, at least I do, and the practice is some other thing that we speak of. And many times, at least when I hear it within the academy, there is a separation between the two. So for me, teaching in studio classes, et cetera, it comes up less. It's more of a service-based thing where we talk about the importance of studio culture, networking, and et cetera.
So Mickey, is the AIA completely separate from the practice of architecture, or is it integral to the profession of architecture?
Well, I'm going to tell you it's integral to the
Yeah,
profession of architecture. Is it completely separate? I don't think we have our finger on the pulse on a lot of the issues that we should have our finger on the pulse on. And hopefully the repositioning will identify that. I think the gap that is perceived out there between practice and AIA and the academy is one we have to seriously look at, because I would probably challenge your statement in that, how did you put it, the practice that I believe that I'm involved in the practice of architecture. I build buildings. I believe you're involved in the practice of architecture. You're building people. And the job of the academy is to teach our young people to think and be able to solve problems. And if you are able to come out into the marketplace, be able to solve problems, I think it's that's what we need to do. And what we've lost, quite frankly, is the firm culture of continuing that teaching and education on that we used to have years ago. So the firm cultures have changed so much because of the pressures of the marketplace and recession and all those things. So our job in AIA, I believe, is start building that firm culture on continuing education on, because we have no exit strategy for education once you graduate. And that's shameful for all of us in practice and everywhere in the profession.
Other comments from panelists?
I think they're very much integrated. And another story, I met a young woman at a happy hour in Ann Arbor, graduate student at another university about an hour from here. And, she had been not given any kind of information, I guess, about how to go forward and what to do. And it was a little, and it may be just anecdotal, it's one person, but I think some universities don't connect into the AIA as much as LTU and UDM, I think more so. But, and there's a real opportunity missed where this student and many others just don't really understand how to move into the profession, and just, again, meeting people, networking with older people, more experienced or more farther into their career, and just helping out. And I've gotten connected with her now, and I'm trying to give her some guidance. But I think the schools could do more. Some of the schools could do more on that.
Hey, Kurt, any comments?
I guess having been at Grassroots a couple weeks ago for the AIA, there is a discussion about how to bridge that gap or connect the education to the working experience in a much more cohesive way. So hopefully, by the time you guys get out of school, things will be in place that the system will be a little more streamlined. Because I know when I got out of school as an undergraduate, I learned a lot of design things, but then, to tell me to draw a detail for a footing, I didn't really know how to do it. You know, I mean, the problem-solving skills are great because then you kind of figure out how to do it, and you ask a lot of questions, and you learn. But
Well, if you went to Lawrence Tech, you would.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I went to USC.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
At USC, we just learned how to drive on the freeway.
If you don't know how to design the footing, you're going to be buried under it, you know, that sort of thing.
So I guess, you know, in closing, it's that's one thing I went through, and you know, there is a place for each, as Mickey mentioned, you know, the academic and the working world.
But before we leave this, I just want to ask one follow-up question. And certainly it's being talked about around the AIA right now, and in the backroom conversations among board members. And we had a symposium here, and it was a job hunting symposium last month. And it was about non-traditional practice models. Of the group of students that was there, most of them believe that they will practice non-traditionally. Up to 2/3 of all, and they're in a school of architecture, and they're going to get their architecture degree, and some of them will get licensed, but they're going to practice as real estate developers, and they're going to practice in construction management. Maybe fabrication is one of them. Some of them want to teach, which is also a non-traditional practice model. And to what degree does the AIA have to adapt? AIA is very good at traditional architects. Go out and get a license, we're going to stamp the drawings, we're going to do buildings. And that's what AIA is really designed for. And it is the American Institute of Architects. And it gears itself to people that are licensed architects as members. If we pursue that with fewer people getting licensed in the future, that 80,000 membership is going to drop down. It's going to drop down to 40,000, and you're going to have other organizations spinning off around other kinds of things. So does the AIA need to widen its horizons and be a more inclusive group and perhaps get bigger and have a bigger voice, or is it okay for the AIA in the future to say, no, we're going to stay the course and really address the issues of practicing architects that are licensed, and that's who we're going to really represent. And we're going to have a more fervent, more passionate organization around traditional practice. So which future do you think will exist for AIA? That's you first. I'm looking at the president. I'm looking at the president of the AIA. And it's just your opinion.
My opinion is we better figure out how to look at what alternative practice and what new ideas of practice are, and how that affects the people that are trained in the architecture education, or else we'll become, just a small trade organization with no political power and really no oomph to do anything at all. We'll be servicing a growing, larger dinosaur that will continue to consume itself. We have to look out to the future and what people really need the AIA to be, and that's really the choice of our members as they move forward. I mean, that's empowering our members to take it where we want to take it. If we don't do that, we might as well give it. Licensure will go away anyways if we don't do that, because the marketplace will dictate the value of licensure eventually. So we better figure out what licensure really means and how we do it.
Very quickly, because we're going to run out of time a little bit, agree or disagree?
I agree.
Agree.
How many people agree that AIA has to broaden its horizons and seek a wider audience? Or not? Anyone disagrees? Because about only 50% of you held up your hand. Is there anyone that disagrees?
Hey, Glenn.
So the other 50% haven't really thought about it yet. Got a hand back there, okay.
Glenn, really quick, I think it's important, though, to reinforce in that statement, at least from my perspective, so all the people that raise their hand may not agree. I think the one thing that, it's almost like the AIA could do two things simultaneously. On a certain part of what they hold important, they should dig their heels in, and that is a core competency that we understand, and also an ethic that an architect brings to the profession about the built environment. So there is this set of core competencies that should never be in question. It's almost like the fundamentals of architecture. We don't want to mess with those, right? Then, on top of that, it needs to embrace those specialists that come along. So we all have a common ground, which is the core competency of being an architect. And then beyond that, it's no different than you would not go to your general practitioner to have heart surgery. You know, they all are MDs, but then they have the thing that they do. And for some reason, architecture has not understood that.
But
or AI hasn't
that
understood
does imply specialization, which so far the AIA hasn't really embraced this notion of specialization. Correct, Gene Hopkins?
And you're touching exactly on my question.
Bam, okay.
You all kind of touched on it and kind of danced around it, and it really is the, see if I can craft it in a question for you, the structure for which we will practice. And practice, again, can take multiple means and methods, but we're in today's environment, we're seeing a lot greater specialization or certification within a lot of the other professionals. I mean, it's already starting to happen a little bit architecturally as well. There's been a debate and discussion going on lately that one of the strengths of AIA is we're 80,000 plus members that can practice general architecture. That's what we're trained to do. But because of the mindset of the public about specialization, knowledge-based practice, are we devaluing ourselves to be just a general practitioner of architecture, or do we all need to specialize to be able to fulfill that public perception of the value of an architect and what we do? So is that going to completely restructure how we practice? No more large firms. We're all practicing individually because of an expertise and specialty that we all bring, and the large firm's going to go away, and the small firm is going to grow. Thoughts?
Tamara Burns, preservation architect. What do you think about this?
I have to say we've been talking a lot about this, and I'm not sure where I land on that yet. I worry that by specializing or having certification, you're just further splintering sort of the definition of an architect. And then what is an architect? You know, you've got all these different specializations. So I think I'm sort of not in favor of the, not necessarily specialization, but certification. I think we are all architects. I mean, even doing preservation, we do other work too, and we use the values that we find in preservation to do new work, new buildings and infill and additions and things. And it's a respect for context, a respect for community. So it's not that specializing in historic preservation means that we're just locked into a small area of practice.
In your question, there's a bit of an assumption that everyone would specialize, right? So, I mean, it seems to me that there's only a portion of people that would want to specialize. And so it's just a matter if you want them to be a part of the AIA, and if you want them to be a part of the kind of core competency that I was talking about. And I would rather have them on our team, right?
Go ahead.
I got
Kurt.
one idea. I think the future firm structure is going to be more like, and this kind of piggybacks on what Jim was saying earlier about practicing globally, is that, I was looking at an RFP for a project recently, and, they want you to list out all this experience, who's on your staff, all these, very structured and antiquated systems. I think the future of the practice is going to be where all of us that become architects can assemble a team, by email, and we can work digitally. I mean, our models are going to be in the cloud anyway, and so we can work and collaborate in a cloud sort of space, with people around the world. And so the firm itself may not be an office in downtown wherever, but the firm will be whoever, collaborates and collects the minds together and thinks and works on a project together. And I think that's kind of where the definition of the firm will be.
Mickey?
I think the biggest competition to big firms in the next 25 years is going to be the virtual company. That the being virtual, being able to assemble a team like that is going to be critical to success. People with specific expertise is to go after projects. I mean, big firms kind of do that in-house as it is, and big firms will always be there because big firms have the financial wherewithal to go into bigger projects that the development community is going to want to have. I get that. But I think virtual companies that change depending on the project are really going to be a new model, especially with this generation coming out. I just really believe that that's going to happen, and we really have to accommodate it.
That's not location based.
No, not at all.
So
I can be working with somebody from Sacramento or London, England, or Shanghai on a project.
And how essential are, let's tie this back together again in terms of supplying the emerging professionals. How essential are schools in nurturing this idea about virtual communication, virtual teaming? Is that an important thing for the students to learn in school, or do they just pick it up when they're out in the profession?
At least what I'm seeing, they already have it.
Yeah.
When they arrive. I mean, it's...
Yeah. So they're not picking it up in school, they're bringing it to us.
That's right.
I don't see why schools, I mean, my son takes some virtual courses. I'm sure you have virtual courses here. I mean, it's happening. Can somebody,
yes.
I mean, why isn't Lawrence Tech can probably have students from anywhere in the world,
We do.
ultimately, and they don't have to be sitting here on this campus.
And I think that's a message also to the students here today. The geography doesn't matter so much anymore. I've taught in China, and almost every summer for the last 3 years I've taught in Albania and Kosovo, and I showed a slide once to a bunch of students, and I said, you see all those students out there? I said, they're smart and they want your job, right? And they can have it too, if they want it.
Okay. We are winding down, and you have the last question.
Oh man, Lucy's got the last word.
Student question here.
Why don't you state your name for the record?
I'm Lucy Mulder. I'm an IDS 2, and I'm with the USGBC. I had a question. You mentioned something about public health. I was looking for some strategies to achieve that. So I realized that we're trying to make buildings to improve the quality of life, and that's making those buildings more comfortable through universal design and strategies like that. But I worry that that might also unintentionally promote laziness. What are some strategies to promote public health and still incorporate universal design?
Well, I can tell you about a building that I wasn't involved with. I was at Smith Group when it was being done. This is Vistion Village, and it's a building that was built, I think it was only 3 stories. There was connecting stairwells as, much more often than the elevators. The elevators were not as accessible. There was a street outside that you could walk between the buildings. There was a walking path around the stormwater detention, which had been turned into a lovely lake. I think the average person there lost 15 pounds the first year. Just things like putting, not hiding the elevator, just making it not first and foremost. I think that's what promotes laziness, is putting the elevator right in front. You need to have it accessible for those that need it, but if you create beautiful stairs that people want to take and you don't have those ugly, fire stairs that nobody does anything with, stairs that people actually want to be inside of. And also just bringing light in. That was the other thing about Vistion. I think the building was only 60 feet wide, so that you were always within 30 feet of a natural light and ventilation. Those are all things that promote public health, well-being in our environments.
Public health and well-being, the final remarks.
That's why I go back to changing culture. We have to start at the root of this problem, and the root of this problem is that if we want to change that, we want public health to be a big part of this, we have to start the way we design our schools. Because if we don't start designing schools that are smaller schools, that are more intimate, from a sustainable standpoint, but also schools that are involved in neighborhoods so our kids can walk and ride their bikes there, and we start that culture at an early age and we start it generationally, then we will fail regardless of how many LEED gold buildings we design. It doesn't really matter. It has to start with the cultural aspect of it. A healthy lifestyle starts with how you're taught and what you understand, and that continues on through your entire life. My question is, how much gasoline in this country do you think is wasted every year by parents waiting in line to pick up their kids at elementary school? How do we fix that problem? That's where we need to start.
You guys want the last word?
Ditto.
Okay. You have a ditto and you have something to add. And you're actually going to get the last word in this whole
I
thing.
get the really? Well, that's because I was sitting on the end. But I think any generation of architect already knows, what public health is and how we can design to it. It's making sure that we can convince the clients, so you don't get bullied into a corner that says, well, that's too expensive. And I think as we all get into the world of architecture, we have to stand by our values and what we learned in school and say, and be willing to maybe drop the job if you're not going to be able to design the building the way it should be designed. And that's the last word.
Interesting, in my, so I get the last word now. In my career, as we were trying to convince in the early days of the sustainability movement, owners to perhaps pay a little bit extra for a more sustainable building, we were able to cite some empirical studies that were undertaken that showed that a more healthy environment in the building increased worker productivity, and the most expensive part of that building owner's, let's say it's a corporate building that you're doing, the most expensive thing about that building project is the people in the building. It costs much more than the building itself, so that if you can increase productivity by 15% by providing a more healthy environment, it's going to increase their bottom line. So the message to them as the business owner is sustainability is good for your bottom line. And this gets at the point of us as architects, to me, having to understand the language that our clients speak and speak that language and not speak architectese all the time. So Mickey's writing a note. Mickey, you're the invited guest here from out of state and national and all that kind of stuff. So sorry, Kurt, I got to give Mickey the last word if he needs it.
My only last word is go out and be great.
All right.
Do what you do best. Be creative. Be innovative. Go out and just be great in whatever you choose to do, and we'll all be better off because of it. Good luck to you all, and thanks for being in the architecture world.
Thank you. Now, thank you to all. And just a few announcements for those of you that are AIA members. There's a podium over there where you can sign up for AIA Continuing Education Credit. So please avail yourself of that opportunity. There are two other things coming up that we want to make you aware of. Number one is on April 18th is the AIAS student auction, and tickets are on sale for that. AIAS members, how much are the tickets?
$25 for professionals, and that's $15 if you're LTU faculty or a student.
So $25 for professionals, and this includes food and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be a very nice reception. The guest of honor for the reception will be Tom Main, AIA gold medal winner, and he'll be signing his books. There'll be a book signing associated with it, and we have the books here already, and they will be on sale. If you buy the book, he'll sign the book for you. And that will be followed immediately after the auction, which starts at 5. At 6 o'clock will be a lecture by Mr. Main, and he will be talking about I've asked him to talk about three things. One is it's a career retrospective. The second is he is the designer of our new engineering building here on campus, and he's going to present some of the early concepts for the building, which we're really excited about. And thirdly, I've asked him to address, because he fundamentally believes this, the importance of drawing and visual communication as a means to architecture. And he's a wonderful artistic architect, and he's going to talk about that, particularly to students, how important it is to know how to draw. We look forward to April 18th. There'll be signs all around. Please come. For those of you that don't hang around here all the time, it's really worthwhile, and you can get it on our website, ltu.edu. It's posted. Secondly, A. Alfred Taubman, starting on the 19th, the night of the 19th, will have an exhibition of, I believe it's 18 works from his private art collection here at Lawrence Tech in the UTLC gallery. And it'll be open to the public on, there's a private opening on the 19th, but the 20th, 21st, 22nd, I think 23rd. We will have a lecture here that Monday night. Be looking for it because we're finalizing it, where there will be a curator from the Detroit Institute of Arts that will come in and give a lecture on the particular pieces in Mr. Taubman's collection that are being shown. And so we would like you to avail yourself. These are things that have not been publicly shown at any time, coming out of his direct private collection, and it's a pretty outstanding collection. And so please avail yourself of that. It'll be open all weekend, and then Monday night is that special night. We'll be sending out announcements through AIA Michigan and through our own alumni network about the showings. Yes. And let's see, did I miss anything? Credit and events coming up. I think we're done, except to thank our speakers and panelists today, Kurt, Jim, Tamara, and Mickey Jacobs. Thank you so much.